In a previous series on my channel, we built a chatgpt application with inside Flutterflow. We are now going to extend that application due to a popular request from the community to allow you the ability to actually save chat history with inside the application. So not only can you save the chat history, you can retrieve it, you can carry on the conversation with chatgpt, and of course you can delete them and all that kind of stuff as well. So if you love this type of walkthrough, I'm going to show you all of the changes that I've made to the application. So hopefully you'll learn something along the way as well. So without further ado, let's get cracking. So here we go then with the application fired up. Now at first glance you'll probably think, hang on a minute, that doesn't look much different to what we created previously, but actually it is, because at the top right hand corner here we now have a hamburger menu. So we can just click on that and you can see here that what I'm showing you is a previous chats which have been saved with inside the application. Of course we can then click on the actual little button here then, and it will actually then load that chat back into the chat window. You can then carry on having that conversation, of course, or you can then actually clear the conversation and then you can then have a new one. So if I go back up to the hamburger menu there, if I just hit clear current conversation at the bottom, I can then come down here. I'm just going to paste a question that I've just got in my clipboard. How long is Route 66 in America? I can hit the little send option here, and then that's now going to call out to ChatGPT, and then I'm going to get the actual response back. And what I can now do is click on the hamburger menu up in the top right. I can click this little icon here because it's now become active, this button. I can now hit that and a bottom bar is then going to display, and then I can then just type in a just a title there, test title here, or should I say test description, hit save chat, and then that chat is then saved. And of course I can click back on the moon landing and I'll get that chat back up. I can go back to this one here and I can click on the Route 66 chat, and then I can continue the conversation with ChatGPT at that particular point. So that's the application changes that I've made. Let's now walk through all of the changes that I've made. And of course, at the end of this particular video, you're then going to be able to download and clone this particular project. The key thing to remember though, please do go into the application state and change the API key that you need to call out to ChatGPT. But other than that, you should be able to fire it up and you should then be able to use the application. So here we are then with inside the widget tree of the application. Let's have a look at the changes that I've made to it. So on the left hand side, let's firstly click on the app state option here, and there's a new entry here called saved conversations, which is a list of type JSON, and it's persisted true, which is important because we're going to save these conversations with inside the actual device itself that it's going to be running on. And you can see here that the type is just simply a list JSON. So pretty well much that is the only changes being made into the state. Now what this saved conversations is going to contain is really just a list of all of the previous conversations, but there is just one slight difference, is that at the for every entry that goes in there, we are going to wrap each of the current conversations with a title and a description. Okay, so that's really important, and you'll see where that applies very shortly with inside another custom function that I've made, because we're going to take the current conversation, we're going to wrap it in the title and description, and then we're going to save it with inside that saved conversations list. That way, with inside the drawer that pulls out from the right hand side, you're going to see the title and the description, but behind the scenes, the current conversation that we've saved is stored there as well. So then when we come to retrieve it, we'll go into that particular entry and then we'll pull out that current conversation with inside, and then we'll save it back into the current conversation app state variable just here. So I know that's a bit of a mouthful, might be a little bit to get your head around, but I'll walk you through how that works with inside the actual application very shortly. So that is the application state changes at the moment. So now back within the home page of the application, you can see that I'm on the widget tree. I've just collapsed down that particular column here. Okay, that's the column that kind of contains all of the the chat details and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just collapsing that down, and you can see here that we've got this new widget that's been added called End Drawer. Now the End Drawer will actually appear on the right hand side. And the way that you can activate that within the design mode of the application is if you just go to the home page here, just select that, and then you've got this edit end drawer option that's now appeared. So Flutterflow has detected that you've got this End Drawer widget within inside the widget tree, and of course it's here just on the right hand side. So I simply just added it, and then you can then click this little option here, and then you can actually now start making changes to the end drawer that's here. Now this representation that you see within inside the end drawer is made up of all of these widgets that just sit on here. Okay, so there's not too many widgets, but there's just enough there for us to kind of have a look at in terms of how everything is structured. So the first, we have this column. We've got a column which is completely taken up all of the available space within inside the end drawer, and then within inside the actual column itself, we then have a row, and the row has just simply got a couple of icon buttons. If I just click on the row here, you can see that what I've done is I've actually selected this option here, space between. And what this allows us to do is if we've got two icon buttons, it means it's going to stretch out the actual widgets within inside the row to both the start and the end. So just going to push them all out to the left and right hand side. And that's why we've got that sort of look on the UI. So there's no space that's required or anything like that in between. They're just pushed out to the left and right. And these icon buttons have a couple of actions that have been associated with it. I'll show you what they are very, very shortly. Moving further down, we've got this scrollable column. So the scrollable column is it's just a traditional column that's been added as a widget. It's got the scrollable option selected, and it's currently the primary. Okay, so what that will allow us to do is it means that everything that's within inside it will then scroll up and down. Of course, then if it becomes oversized and it drops off the bottom of the screen, then everything else within inside it will just kind of scroll up and down. So it's not the list view that's going to be scrolling, it's going to be the actual column itself. And to be honest with you, we don't need to optimize the application too much in here, because I don't suspect that any user who would be using this application is going to have a massive list of sort of chat history items there. So it's safe for us here to not do any too much optimization around the actual column itself. Now within inside the scrollable column, we've then got this list view here. Okay, now the list view itself, we'll have a look in a second how that is just set up from a binding perspective. But inside the actual the list view, we've then got these panels here, and of course, depending on how new you are to Flutterflow, we've only got one panel in here, although here it looks like we've actually got more, but that's really just Flutterflow showing us that it's actually got multiple sort of child items within inside this particular list view. So we've only got one container, and then within inside that container we've just got a row, and then of course we've then got the column, and then we've got two pieces of content that is vertically stacked, and of course just at the end then we've got the actual icon button, and it's that icon button that will then call an action which will then take that particular chat and then apply it back into the main chat window that is just behind. Okay, so we'll just apply it to the current conversation list that we have behind. So we'll delve into that in a moment. And then just at the bottom here, we've got a row that just sits on the bottom here with a button, and that button is just simply an action that will clear the current conversation. So in fact, we'll just have a look at that now. Actually, if I just select the actual button itself, let's go into the action, and all we're doing here is we're updating the app state. We're saying within inside the current conversation, just clear the value, just get rid of it. We're not interested in anything more inside that list. So that clears it out, and then we've just got a very simple action here which will then close that drawer that we've actually got that pops out from the right hand side. So very simple button action that's just there. So just moving back up then, so with inside the actual icon button here, the one up the top left, there's a very simple action that's just behind that, and that is really just to do exactly the same thing, close the dialog or the drawer. So just one simple action, we'll just move that out of the way, and then on the one on the right hand side is where we then actually save the current conversation, and we'll pop back into that very shortly. Now with inside the chat history list view here, you can see here that I've just just on this option here on the actual children, so to generate the dynamic children, we have a new variable called save chat. So every single row that appears in here will be associated with a saved chat variable, so that gives us our single row, and then the value of that is coming from our saved conversation. So the app state that I just showed you that we created, we just simply are pulling from the app state the saved conversations, and it's just our list. So there's nothing too much to worry about there. Very simple setup. And then of course within inside the actual row here, we've got our title and our description. If I just select this little option up here, you can see here that we're pulling out our variable, the variable that I just showed you called save chat item. We're just saying the JSON path, and we're just going down to the actual title itself. And we're doing the same thing here with the description. And I'll show you how that is set up in a moment when we look at the custom function. So just simple, very simply, just two text fields there, just bound to a JSON path of the title and the description. So that's pretty well much our end drawer. I'm going to focus now and explain to you a little bit how the actual custom function works in terms of preparing our chat to be wrapped with the title and the description, which can then be bound to this particular list view that you're just seeing here. So let's go and have a look at that now. So let's have a look at our custom function. Just on the left hand side here, I can just choose a custom code, and you can see here we've got a new entry that's here, and that is called prepare save a chat. So I've just gone up to here, add a custom code, put the title in there, and put some arguments in here on the right hand side. So if I just select it, you'll see what we've got down here. So what's going to happen with this particular custom function is that when we go to actually save the current conversation, so this is the one that you've just applied, we're going to make a call out to this particular custom function that will pass in the title and will pass in the description. If you remember, the bottom bar that pulls up from the bottom there is going to have the title and the description that the user is going to key. There's going to be a save option. When that save option is going to call this particular function, it's going to pass in the widget title, pass in the description. But what it's also going to do, it's going to pull out the current conversation that you've actually got with inside the main window. It's going to pass it into this particular function. And what I'm going to do is I'm then going to get hold of it. I'm going to actually wrap it with the title and the description of the actual of the widgets that's been completed, the actual detail, and then the chat, which is the current conversation I'm passing in. So you can see here that there's a new hierarchical structure created: title, description, and then we've got the history. And then what I'm doing is I'm then returning it back. So passing the details in, wrapping it, and then passing it back out to the calling action. And you'll see where that gets applied in just a moment on the little save button up in the top right hand corner of the drawer that comes out, and we can have a look at that. So yep, just down the right hand side here, and we just got the title argument there, the description, and the chat. Obviously, as you add these, they get added into the piece of code here. Again, if you're not a coder, you don't need to worry too much about it. I'm just trying to really explain kind of how this particular function works. Really simple, so you can literally just copy what I'm doing here and you'll get the same result. So that's the custom code. Let's see how that bottom bar now works with inside the main application. So back to our home page then, back to the widget tree. Let's now just imagine the scenario. Okay, so you have a conversation that's currently active with inside the running application. So what's going to happen is that the hamburger menu is going to be selected up here. The drawer then gets displayed, okay, and then the user is going to hit this little save button here, okay. So they'll click that, and then let me walk you through exactly what this actual sort of action is actually happening here. So the first thing that's going to happen is that the bottom sheet is going to get displayed. Now the bottom sheet is just situated here. It's a brand new component here on the left hand side called save a chat component. That gets displayed at the bottom of the screen, and you can see here that this is a really simple component because we have a container, and within inside that particular container we have a form validator. So we just want to make sure that the user is completing the form successfully. So it's a very simple form validator. If I just hit over here, you can see here that I'm only asking for the title and the description. They've both got ticks here, so we're just making sure that the user does actually complete those. Okay, then we've got a column obviously, and within inside the column we've then got the row. This is the bit that just sits above the top here, this like little icon, this like little container here that looks like you can move the bar up and down. Nothing too crazy. We've got some text widgets. Then we've got the title, which is our text fields. Okay, so we've got a single text field here, a single text. If I just scroll down here, you can see that this is a simple text field. It's just got a keyboard type as text, nothing special being set up here. The only thing I have done is I set this to be autofocus. So as soon as that bottom bar is displayed, the cursor is flashing with inside the actual title as well. Okay, so just that's all we've got here. Just some properties set, and just one, just as a max line of 1. The next one we've got is called description, and again this is really just multi-line here, max lines of 4. Again, nothing special that's been set in the details, it's just below. We don't obviously have an autofocus on this one because it's the second field. And then we've got a row here, and then within inside that row we have the save chat button. Now this save chat button is where the magic happens. This is where the custom function then gets called. So let's now click on the action flow editor, just open that there, and we can now see we've got a number of actions that are taking place within inside this flow. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is validate the form. Really simple action to add to your flow. Just select validate form, and then of course you can see that it's the form save chat that we're actually validating. We're not going to move down this path here until that form is valid itself. So the user must input a title and a description. Now the next up, we are going to then move in the update app state. So if we just assume that everything is being completed by the user, this is where the main piece happens. It's probably the most complex bit of the change that we've made within inside this particular application. So up here, we're updating the app state. So what we're going to do is we're now going to save the conversations list, okay, back to the application state. If I just select that, and what we're going to do is we're going to add the conversation that's currently in play into that saved conversations list. Okay, so that saved conversation list is going to contain multiple conversations, and we're going to save a new one into it. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to call out to our custom function. We are going to pass in our title and our description, and of course we're going to pass in the current conversation at that particular time, and we do that by just simply now setting up these particular values here. So you can see here that what I'm doing, I'm calling out this custom function, and it's the prepare save chat, the actual function that we're actually calling, and that expects us to pass in this title. And if I just choose this here, of course it is just, if I just edit this, you can see it's just the widget state, which is the title, and we're going to do the same here for the description as well. So we're just going to set those parameters into our custom function. And then this is the more interesting piece. Okay, so we're going to pass in the chat. Now, as you know, within inside the main part of the application, the current conversation is the conversation that's happening on the home page. So we're going to pass that into the custom function as well. The wrap is going to occur inside the custom function. We're going to add the title and the description, and then the history is going to become the current conversation. And then what we do is we simply just pass that back into as a brand new entry into the saved conversations list as well. So as you can see here, what comes back here, we're just going to say this is the roots, just put the dollar in. So what we've got coming back is going to be the title, description, the history. Just hit confirm, and you can see here that because we're adding to the list, it's all going to come back all nicely wrapped, and we're going to add it into the saved conversation. That's all that we need to do. Okay, and then finally on this particular entry here, we're just going to literally simply close the dialog and drawer. It's going to disappear from the UI, and of course that should be all that's needed for our actions. So continuing with our walkthrough of the application, once that bottom bar actually disappears, so they've actually hit the save button, then what will happen is the list view here will then update, and you'll see your new chat history then added to this list. Now, of course, there's an option here now to retrieve that chat history. We want to apply it back into the current conversation that's on the home screen, and we do that really simply by just, if I just choose the icon here, make sure the actions is selected, click on open, and we're back into the action flow editor. And the main bit is this first action that's actually applied here, where we update the app state. So really all we are doing is we're setting the current conversation. So this is the app state variable. We're setting the current conversation with the actual entry that's actually within inside that list view. Okay, so you can see here I've set the value. If I just select this here, you can see it's the save chat item. If you remember, that's the variable that's within inside our list view, so we're tracking each of those rows, and really all we're doing is we're selecting JSON path and we're pulling out the history. So if you remember, within inside the custom function where we create that wrapper, you've got the title, description, and then we got a third entry in there called history. All that is really doing is that's just pulling out our current conversation that we had loaded in there previously from $history, and then we're then applying that back into the current conversation within inside the app state here. Okay, so we're just really just clearing out that list within inside the current conversation and replacing it with the one that we got saved within inside the chat history. So just hit cancel on that one. So that's really quite straightforward. We then want to do a little delay. So I've actually added a delay in here now. Now what this is really just doing is this is just giving the UI some time to actually update. And you'll see why this is important is because after this, we've got the scroll to. So what we'll do is we'll set the current conversation with the conversation from the history. We'll just give time for the UI to update. And what we're doing is we're then scrolling to the bottom of that current conversation. Okay, we want to put the user right back to where they were, right at the bottom, so they can carry on with their conversation. And I just simply added a 200 millisecond here scroll to. Without that delay, what happens is sometimes, it depends on how fast the device is, sometimes you get the scroll will work, sometimes it does not. So just introducing a slight delay is not too bad for the user, but just gives the time for the UI to actually update. And then finally, just after that, we're just then closing out the dialog drawer. So that's the simple action that is doing that work for us in terms of retrieving the history of the conversation. And I think next up, we've then also got a further action that I've actually just created, which I didn't kind of demonstrate actually inside the application, but with inside the actual chat history container, you can just see here I've got this other option here. And what this is actually doing is actually removing the actual history out. So I think it's on the actual long press. So if you actually hold your finger down on, we're actually going to remove the chat history entry from our saved conversations. And you can see here that I've just done a set fields here, and I've just said remove from list. I'm just passing in the saved chat item back into this here to the actual value to remove, and then you'll find then that actually will get them wiped out. So just a very simple way of actually then deleting the history item. And of course, just down the bottom here, we've also got clear current conversation, which has just got that simple, quick, we just do the update up the app state. We just go in here and we just actually clear the value, and then we then close the dialog. So really, really simple. So just a couple of other random bits then just to introduce into this video here. We've got obviously the hamburger menu here. If I just literally click on the action here, you can see that what we're doing is when we actually do an on tap, we're opening up the end drawer here. So you just go to drawer and then you say open end drawer, and that means it will slide in from the right hand side. And of course, there's the X within inside the drawer that obviously will close it out as well. So that's that bit. And then also as well, we've got this little this copy responsive, this row here. I know that I had a couple of queries on the main series where I didn't actually introduce the copy option. I've done that here for completion really more than anything. So you can see here we've got an action that is just behind that particular row here. If I just go up to the actions here, click open, and quite simply it's just doing copy to clipboard. It's taken in the content. This is the text within inside that particular sort of chat window, and then that's then passing it to the clipboard. And the show snack bar is really just saying that it's being copied to the clipboard. So really, really straightforward to do that as well. So back in the app state, you'd have noticed here that we've got this is dark mode setting with inside here, which is just a Boolean indicator, which is currently false. I've also just updated the application to utilize that as well. So if you're finding you're actually getting a dark looking sort of view of the application almost by default, this will allow you to correct that. So go back to the actual widget tree here, go to the home page, and there's a new action that's been added here. If I just open that here, you can see we've got this set dark mode setting, and I've just bound it to the actual app state variable itself called is dark mode. So that will just make sure that if you do decide to enhance the application to put a toggle in there to then choose between dark and light modes, then if you just hook onto that particular app state variable, then that toggle will then allow you to choose very dynamically whether something is in dark or light mode, and the application will just be updated automatically to support that. So finally then, if you're looking to clone this application, as I mentioned before, please do check the link in the description, and that will give you access to the project once you've got your Flutter Flow account, of course. Just a couple of little pointers though to mention that when you do clone the actual application, there's a couple of little bits that you need to do because you'll get errors if you don't. With inside the actual app state itself, in the app state here, you just need to make sure that you put your API key in here as well. So this is your chatgpt API key. So make sure you do that and paste that in there, otherwise the application won't fully function. And then the other thing you're going to need to do is within inside the actual custom code as well, you'll find that up the top here, you'll probably have a couple of errors up here. You just need to make sure that you go into these custom functions here and just actually compile them. You'll see there'll be a compilation error. So just go make sure that you actually compile them. You're also going to need to do the same one for this one here as well. So just make sure you compile those, and then your application will then be up and running. You can just literally hit the run and you should see everything that you've seen in this particular video. So I hope you enjoyed these updates to this particular application. I hope the community found it useful. Of course, please do check all of the details in the description of this video to grab yourself a copy of this cloned project as well. So if you do like this type of content, if you do love following Flutterflow and the general no-code space, then please do check out a whole plethora of videos that is currently on my channel. Hopefully there'll be something there for you to learn. And of course, please do like the video. Really do appreciate all your likes, and of course